To take you back a little bit, when I first started at Square in 2010, I remember working on a piece for like 9 months with Wired about the fact we moved into a brand new office, and I worked my ass off for this story. And I remember just bringing this reporter in for endless tours and executive interviews. It was huge. And I always like to give that as an example of like how far media has come, or like how much it's changed from like what's newsworthy today and what's not. And so today with traditional media, how you need a really strong news hook, and you need to understand how your startup fits into like the big picture, what's happening in the macro environment, what's trending that's relevant to your startup.
We've got Lindsay Amos, the founder of Amos Communications. She previously led comms at Combinator from 2018 to 2024, wrote the handbook on startup PR and marketing.
People care about who the CEO is behind companies, or who the founder is behind companies, and it really influences how they think about that company.
I want to talk about another company that you recently started, the To-Do List Summit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the goal for that and what you're building there?
I've been wrestling with this for a while, because when I was at YC, I would also tell founders, you do not need to hire.
Fondo.com, the all-in-one accounting platform for startups.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Lindsay, and welcome,
Thanks.
everybody. Thanks for joining us. We have a very special episode today. We've got Lindsay Amos, the founder of Amos Communications. She previously led comms at Y Combinator from 2018 to 2024, wrote the handbook on startup PR and marketing. Super excited to have you. Before that, led comms at Square, was also at Meta. So you've been on all sides of the table, helping founders build their corporate comms, as well as helping thousands of founders in YC think about marketing, founder-led marketing and comms, and now you're a founder yourself. So super excited to jump in. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, so wanted to jump into just traditional media versus the new media of today.
Yeah.
So I guess that's going to cover like TechCrunch and now the move to like Alex Conrad at the upstarts. How is media changing? How do founders need to think about this?
Yeah. To take you back a little bit, when I first started at Square in 2010, I remember working on a piece for like 9 months with Wired about the fact we moved into a brand new office, and I worked my ass off for this story. And I remember just bringing this reporter in for endless tours and executive interviews. It was huge. And I always like to give that as an example of like how far media has come, or like how much it's changed from like what's newsworthy today and what's not. And so today with traditional media, how you need a really strong news hook, and you need to understand how your startup fits into like the big picture, what's happening in the macro environment, what's trending that's relevant to your startup. But then what's nice is that even though it's harder to land in traditional media today, you do have this new media movement where you have a ton of journalists leaving traditional media and going to launch their own Substacks and newsletters and podcasts. And it gives you so many more opportunities to gain the eyeballs of your audience, because there are many more outlets. I will also say it's nice because a lot of these reporters or content creators have such a loyal audience that you can often get better results by working with them, because their readership wants to support what you're writing about, and they have a better outlook on your company. And so when it comes to founders, like how to think about traditional and new media, it's working with both, but I can't emphasize enough, like you have to figure out where your audience is. And so like if your audience is reading traditional media like Fortune and Wall Street Journal, like you need to land in those. But if they're actually listening to podcasts that are covering evergreen content and what's happening in AI, like go there. So in the end, it doesn't matter exactly the outlet you're working with. It matters where your audience is.
That's really interesting, because I think, I don't know, I think the founders who have been around since the like old media days still think about like, oh, I got to land that TechCrunch article.
Totally.
Like, by any means necessary. But
yeah.
It sounds like actually getting in a newsletter might even have more impact.
It could. And, you know, it really depends who your target audience is, right. Not just your buyer, but also a lot of times people are landing funding announcements because they actually need to recruit. And it's nothing about who your customer is. And it's like recruiting. It's like, yeah, you want to land in TechCrunch and you want to be able to reach that audience. So yeah, it still is important to land in TechCrunch. It just really depends on like who you're actually trying to reach.
Yeah, and there's this new trend of the cinematic launch video for your funding announcement.
I love them. I remember watching, I mean, it's probably like 6 months ago, like the most awkward launch video with the founders who like really look in the camera.
Yes.
And
that's important.
I was like, you're just like staring into my soul. And they knew what they were doing. And I feel so old right now, but it reminded me so much of like those 2009, 2010 launch videos that people went all out on.
Oh, yeah.
And like we've had a resurgence of those because I think a big part of it is what algorithms are doing. So like on X, when you are publishing videos and you can hook your audience in within the first few seconds, like you're going to reach an incredible audience. Same thing with LinkedIn. But also today more than ever, people care about who the CEO is behind companies or who the founder is behind companies. And it really influences how they think about that company. And so often what that means too is like, how do you show up maybe on camera and show the audience like this is the person behind the company? And people really like that. It's actually why this is so nice that you're doing it, right? It's like people want to know David behind Fondo, and even you found a good medium that you feel comfortable doing, and you're able to talk to your audience and reach them that way.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff happening with, I mean, the original cinematic launch was Dollar Shave Club. Remember that? That was like the 2010.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, like the founder had so much influence. I think that video like made them, like they arrived, right? They didn't do even, it's, but then today, Michael and Dalton, I don't know if you saw, they published this morning, they're like, stop with the cinematic fundraising announcements. They're like, and I didn't watch it yet. So I don't know
watch it yet either.
But he did tweet, he's like, I want to see, revenue milestone cinematic videos.
I'm sure he does. He's always been like that. I remember when we were working on YC's top company list, he's like, what if we did like YC's top revenue list? And I'm like, what company is going to give us their revenue and allow us to like publish a list of the rankings? I love Michael and Dalton. They've seen a lot of startups and spot a lot of patterns. But I often think about the fact that the startup community is a lot bigger than YC. And so what works for founders sometimes outside the YC community, like they just have to take different advice, right? Like YC is a powerhouse because they have Bookface, the forum for founders. They have an incredible following on social media. So you get a retweet and it's amazing.
Yes.
And so founders outside that community, though, might need to look at how they break through that noise differently. And videos are a great way to do that right now. I do think, like everything, we'll eventually get an oversaturation, and then people are going to have to shift a little bit and find something new. I think we're actually seeing that with LinkedIn a little bit right now, where it was surprisingly extremely effective for a long time. And now I've been reading things like LinkedIn might be at like the oversaturation level and you might see lesser results, but for now, videos are okay.
I remember, Facebook for a long time had all these rules around, well, their algorithm was a little bit more public, and there were all these rules like, okay, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. And for a period of time, LinkedIn was like, do anything. They want anything to go viral on the feed.
They're like, please make us a thing. We're public now. We need a lot of money.
And now it seems like, it is hard. It's hard to go viral on LinkedIn.
You know, things have like taken a turn when like half of my feed on LinkedIn is like people who are like, let me teach you how to break through the noise on LinkedIn. I was like, no, not the LinkedIn influencers.
It's happening.
But even I've done it, right? Like I needed something that gave me new energy just for me. So I launched the Substack, and I love writing. And I'm like, people have to know it exists. And so I've had to also like play the LinkedIn game, and it's awkward, but like it happened.
Let's pull up the angle.
Let's pull up the angle. Yeah.
So I really liked one of your posts recently about this one. Why your personal hell makes for a great story.
Yeah, this is Candle, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, founders, we all go through personal hell
Yeah.
like pretty frequently for startups.
You do. I've been around you all for a long, long time. It's pretty shitty out there.
So yeah, tell us more about this, candle story and how they use that like pain and like,
Yeah. So for a disclaimer for the audience, I actually have never talked to the Candle founders and I don't know them. So everything in this post was a hypothesis. But I was reading TechCrunch and noticed that this company spoke about how they went through something like a dozen ideas. They labeled 5 of them as pivots. And just like really took the reporter on this journey of transparency of like, they couldn't find a product that people wanted. And it was like that founder hell that a lot of times is not public, right? Like it's hard to be transparent in the moment about like how many times you're failing or like this isn't working. And so it's interesting about Keycard, or not Keycard, I just looked at that. What's interesting about Candle is they waited to land a story until they had such success that they could point to metrics that showed they have 300,000 users. Wow. I think it was 1 million ARR. There's another great stat in there. But like as founders, I wouldn't be transparent in the moment about when things are really bad. Like talk to your friends about that and your parents and your brother and sister. But don't talk too publicly about it, because remember that customers or potential customers and candidates, investors are often looking at your stuff.
Yeah.
And while we all are human and go through struggles, you almost have to create like a very strong persona as the leader of your company. And so be relatable, but be relatable once you have that positive results and you've gotten through it and you can be reflective about like, here's what you can learn from my story. Yes. Anyways, so TechCrunch saw obviously an interesting story in that and they covered Candle for it.
Yeah, so check it out at lindsayamos.substack.com.
What a nice plug.
There's the plug. Let's go.
Thanks.
The angle.
The angle.
So there's a lot of, so this is like positive, like this resurgence of like positive tech media. Dylan, we can take down the, thank you.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Dylan. Tell us about this like trend or this thing happening where, TBPN, the upstarts, like all this media, the angle, like celebrating tech.
Yeah.
What changed?
You actually just jogged something in my memory. I remember being at Facebook and one of the engineers I was working with said, have you ever thought about just landing positive press? And I remember being like, that's my whole job. Like, what do you mean thought about landing positive press? But I actually think that quote's very reflective of what we've seen in the tech industry. Probably since about, I would say like 2016, we saw a huge shift in how the tech industry was covered because of, Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and like big tech companies that we all adored were looked at as being too powerful. And so like we definitely saw a shift there. When it comes to tech coverage these days, it's very easy to figure out like this reporter is cynical about tech, and you can see that come through in that person's writing. Founders should always read reporters' articles before they pitch, because you don't want to work with a person like that, right? Like, why would you want someone who's going to be hyper critical and maybe have some bias towards what you're building? But what's nice is there are a lot of new options. I've been in tech and like startups my whole life. I love it. Like I drink the Kool-Aid. Like YC was my dream job and like is still the most incredible place where startups are created. And I think we in the startup ecosystem, we want to read positive, optimistic stories about what we're all building and working on. And so, for myself, I love writing and I love startups. So I just launched a Substack to give me energy. But we're also seeing a shift, like I mentioned earlier, how journalists are leaving traditional media and they're starting their own thing. And as you read their stories, a lot of them are very tech positive. And it's like a resurgence of let's geek out and love tech and what we're building and like break it down.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I also think like I've read a bit of like Business Insider's had some interesting coverage recently too about startups. And I see them hiring reporters who are more positive as well, which is nice. But I would say overall, like I can't emphasize enough the importance to founders to actually read the articles being written by a reporter or a content creator or listen to them. Like podcasts are obviously really important here as well. But like figure out, is that reporter going to be positive and excited about what you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've coached a lot of founders, like, you know, early stage founders typically don't have access to like comms training at all, right? And you helped like thousands of founders with this.
Yeah.
And there's always this fear, I think, going on with a reporter that they are going to come for like some gotcha. And like, how did you coach founders going into these sort of press interviews and like how to prepare and like what is important to get through in those meetings and what's important to not get through in those meetings?
Yeah. So when I was at YC, I wrote a lot of content, and one of them was how to prepare for a press interview. And I always pointed founders there because often the easiest questions, or what you think are easy, are the hardest to answer. And those are just, what does your company do? How do you do it? How, like, what are the differentiators? Why are you the best team to get here, like to build this? And I would have them start there and just practice and get comfortable with telling their own story. Often founders are really good storytellers, which doesn't actually work in their favor when it comes to media, because you're going to lose your audience if you talk too much and ramble. And so I would often coach founders on leading with what they're actually building. As a YC founder yourself, I'm sure you have endless memories of being in office hours and repeating your one-liner again and again. And with your one-liner, you lead with the what, not the why, like why you're building it. And that's so important because any audience you're ever talking to, if you don't keep them engaged and immediately tell them what you're building, the what, you're going to lose them, or you're going to have their mind wander and they're going to think, what are they building exactly? And you're just going to lose them. So with press interviews, start with the what, practice those really straightforward questions that you think are easy, so you skip over, so that you know how to talk about your background in a succinct way that makes it extremely easy for that audience to understand why you're building it. To give an example, when I was at Square, I probably heard Jack Dorsey talk about his founder story 1,000 times, about how he grew up in St. Louis and his family owned a coffee shop, and he grew up working in that coffee shop and they couldn't accept credit card payments. But what if they could? And you can empower all small business owners to accept credit card payments. And then Jim McKelvey, the other co-founder, was a glass artist, and he lost out on a sale at a art fair because he couldn't accept credit card payments. And there's a reason I can rattle off those by heart even like almost 10 years later, because we said them again and again. And those are really succinct, relatable to your audience stories and make a ton of sense about why that product needs to exist. And so as founders, you need to really work through your own story and how to tell it to resonate with your audience and make a lot of sense about why you're the best founder. So yeah, go through your basics. The other things I would tell founders is, what are you afraid they're going to ask? Like, what's keeping you up at night? And you absolutely have to practice those, right? Like, most good reporters won't shy away from those things. So if there's a competitor, like an obvious competitor, what are you going to say about them? If you, what's a random example? I don't know. There's like a ton of YC founders, I feel like, that have had mishaps. Like, hey, I saw you publish that video that looks like you can look over sweatshops. Like, then you had to delete it. Like, tell me about that. Like, those founders are going to have to answer questions around that forever. Not forever. I hope they're not listening to this and they're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like, you know, what's interesting is there's also now, there's like you have your own, I guess there's always been this, but even more now with this whole, like, you can follow up on your personal LinkedIn and Twitter about these things. So I think
Yeah.
like Sam Altman recently was being criticized about this like $1.4 trillion raise to build data centers
Yeah.
or something like that. And he was on a podcast and was asked, like, how are you going to do that if you're making like $12 billion this year? You know, how are you going to, you know, where's the money? You know, you're going to raise this money, but like, you know, where's the ROI there? And he, you know, he had a funny answer. Was like, you know, if you want to sell your OpenAI shares, I can find you somebody right now.
That's so good.
Yeah. But then the past couple days, he's been like, you know, talking about it again and gave like a full answer.
His comms team was probably like, that's not working for people. Like, you actually bring up a really good point that there's a narrative, of course, going around in the tech industry about go direct. And I think you bring up a good point that we all have megaphones that we can use, which is we can get on Twitter, X, we can get on LinkedIn, we can post videos, we can write on our blog or Substack, and we can outline exactly what we mean, which is beautiful and lovely. The problem with only going direct, though, is you're just talking to the same bubble. And so it's really hard to build your brand even larger if you're not working with traditional or new media. And so I always advise founders, like, yes, go direct, but it's not go direct or nothing.
Right.
It's you have to do both. And I see the best founders doing both and focusing on a medium that they feel very comfortable and like energetic on, as well as when you have a good news hook or you have a good evergreen story to work like on a podcast and like talking about on a podcast, like, and do that as well.
Yeah. So going back to the PR guide that you wrote at YC, so
Yeah.
you wrote the handbook on PR.
Yes.
What are some of the things that founders should think about when they're trying to get that story written? Like what are the good ingredients to a news hook?
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote that book. I wrote the handbook because I remember Michael Seibel being like, I mean, at the time and during the pandemic, we were investing in like 400 companies. Do you remember? That was crazy.
This, yeah.
And it's like, how do you scale Lindsay? And it's like, let's start writing. My only disclaimer about that, the writing, if you're a YC founder today, is it's so outdated and I hate that. So I'll try to think of a solution. So yeah, little disclaimer there. But what was your original question?
I'm ready for version 2.
Are you? I know, I am too.
Send it out when you've got it.
Yes.
I think a lot of founders would benefit.
But you were asking like what
yeah,
makes
how
this,
do you
how do you find a story?
How do you find a good news hook? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, news hooks specifically, you can think of like funding. Product announcements are not news hooks. Those are ads, right? That's marketing. Any like huge data, like unique data that you might have access to can be a great news hook. And so like typically you can viral videos too. I've seen some great coverage of like this startup's video received like 500 million views, right? Like there's some unique news hooks there too. What's more important though is figuring out how does your company fit into something that's happening in the macro environment? And so right now I'm actually working on a new Substack about a company that fits into a trend that we're all seeing right now where in-person experiences are back and very important. And we all want to go back and like talk face to face. And the second one being wellness. And so this company kind of combines two trends.
I think I saw
or
this, like
did
Sweat
you?
Pals or something. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Sweat Pals. I'm going to write about you. You don't know about it yet. But I love it.
Super
because
interesting. Yeah.
it's a perfect example of like, I found it interesting that this company launched in 2022, but they're just now announcing their seed round. And so it could have been that they were bootstrapped this entire time, or it could have been that they held their seed announcement until it actually made sense in what's happening big picture for them to announce it and get brand awareness and like really push hard. But for all startups, like you have to figure out where your story, your company, your product fits into something bigger happening in the world, or people, at least media, just won't care. Like you have to be able to fit into something that their readers are actively already thinking about.
Okay, so let's say you find something, you have a hook, you send your cold message out to the reporter at TechCrunch, or you go through YC and YC sends it to their network of writers. What happens in that sort of like news? What does that journalist do when they get those stories? Like, how are they picking? How are they sorting?
Yeah.
And what does that whole process
They're
look
probably first like ramming their head against the wall because they've received like 500 pitches that day.
Yes.
I hope not. Don't hit your head against the wall. They're probably looking for a few things in that pitch. They're looking at who are your investors likely, especially at the early stages. That validation of you have backing from YC or Andreessen Horowitz to Sequoia. Like, it's unfortunate because there are great founders who don't necessarily have that, but it's a good early tip off that this company is one worth looking at. Is there a news hook? Like, remember that reporters write about news. You can get away from that if you're working with a podcaster who does more evergreen. But in that case, they're probably looking for what is that extremely unique background or perspective that they're going to offer that my audience will really care about. And when it comes to podcasts, it's more important than ever that you listen to a bunch of them so you understand what they're actually looking for. But back to reporters, they're probably also actually looking for if you're offering them the exclusive. So exclusive means that you're only offering that reporter the news and no other reporter. So you're not going to pitch any other new media, traditional media until their story lands, and then your blog post goes out and you can pitch everyone else. That makes it more newsworthy to them. It makes it easier for their editor to say, yes, you can cover it because you're now going to have access no one else has. You're going to have more time to write it. And so exclusive is the way to go. The only time you can do an embargo strategy, I mean, there's always going to be outliers, but for the most part, until you're a much bigger company, like at Facebook, for example, it was so easy for us to embargo 25, 50 reporters on any news because it's a huge public company that everyone needs insight into. So also include it's an exclusive and include that in your pitch. Yeah.
And how pestering can we be as founders? Like, how much can we pester journalists to write about us, and when should we stop?
I'm
Like, how many
so
unresponded
glad you
emails
asked this
do you-
question. Are you speaking from your own personal experience?
Yes. I think I'm probably one of the most annoying founders on this.
Yeah, I actually, so I do office hours with founders a lot, and one of them called me and said, I emailed a reporter Friday morning. Don't do that, guys. Don't email on Friday mornings. But I emailed a reporter on Friday morning. She didn't answer in 2 hours. And so I think he emailed again. And then
so I emailed their boss.
And well, don't do that. Don't do that. And then she still didn't get back to him. So then he went on her Twitter account and saw that she had a Signal number listed. And so we reached out on Signal, which you also never want to do. That is for like, I have some off the record news about a big company I need to give you. Like, that's what Signal's for, not for pitches. And then she didn't answer. So we texted her. I don't know. It just kept going on and on. All this to say, I'm pretty sure he was blacklisted by the end of this.
Yeah.
What you want to do is send your email, ideally Monday through Thursday. Fridays are when everyone's starting to slow down. Give it a good 24 hours and then politely follow up and say, hi, here's a little bit more about why this is so good and you should cover it. And then usually give a timeline, which could be really helpful. Like, I do plan on pitching another reporter the exclusive if I don't hear back from you by tomorrow morning, but I'd love to work with you here. And then if you hear nothing, consider it a no. But you don't want to pester because often that will leave the reporter having negative feelings about you and definitely not saying yes.
Yes.
Ideally, someone like an angel investor or one of your VCs can give you that warm intro, or someone from your network. If you saw that the reporter covered a friend or maybe another YC startup, ask them for that warm intro, write it for them. But you're much more likely to hear back from a reporter if you can also get that warm intro.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. That definitely helps.
That's good.
Yeah. I think I had it's funny, Varun from Giga ML, shout out to him. He just announced like a $60 million round yesterday.
Wow.
And he actually gave me a warm intro to a writer and they didn't take it. So,
Okay.
but anyway, but then we ended up getting in there. But it is, you got to like keep going, I think,
For
you know,
sure.
and keep trying different
Yeah.
angles.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because they say no once or ignore you once doesn't mean that will be forever.
Yes.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I've also had plenty of founders who just kept striking out, and finally they're like, we're just going to do it ourselves. And that's also okay. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that more and more. And I think that might be where this like viral like launch video comes from. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the story picked up where I want.
Right.
I could, you know, spend some time or a lot of time
Yeah.
making this video, and maybe that'll get more visibility than the post.
Right. But in the end, it's like founders just get back to work. If it's not working out right now, maybe you've got to wait, like Sweat Pals maybe did for 3 years until you have the perfect intersection of IRL and wellness.
I mean, it's also a pretty big trend that we're seeing now with A16Z launching their like new media team.
Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the
don't
ecosystem?
know.
Yeah.
I will say we've seen not a resurgence, maybe like a surgence. Is that a word?
It is now.
We're deeming it now. It's okay. So what I love about a lot of VCs that really support their founders is they have like platform teams, right? And so founders need help usually with go-to-market hiring and that comms branding. And I love VCs who empower their founders with the knowledge they need in order to do all these things. Because in the end, early stage founders shouldn't be spending $20,000 to $30,000 per month on an agency. But founders still need those professionals or those experts to help with their messaging, figure out the story, figure out like how do you actually land in a podcast and just learn the basics. There's always going to be outliers to that. But I always say you still need to know the basics and what works for you, because when you eventually hire your own team or hire an agency, you should be able to know with more certainty that they're actually good. If you're just completely ignorant and had no idea how any of this worked, how do you know that person you hired is actually good or not?
Right.
So I haven't looked too much into what Andreessen Horowitz is doing. I hope it's empowering founders with knowledge and teaching them how to do founder-led marketing or know the basics so they work with an agency.
Yes.
But I have seen a ton of VCs who have platform teams and really help empower their founders.
So how should founders think about the founder's brand versus the company's brand?
Yeah. I hinted at this before about the importance of having a really strong founder brand because people care about that person, behind the company. Axios put out a study that said 8 in 10 US adults, their perception of the company shifts tremendously depending on like who the CEO is. And it was something like 70% of Gen Z will like actively go find a podcast that the founder was on. Yeah. And so we're seeing it now more than ever that founders can really change the perception people have of the company. And so what that means for founders is they have to start talking about their vision and be a strong spokesperson for their own company. I've said this a few times, but I can't emphasize enough, like you don't have to do everything. Like you don't have to do this. You don't have to write huge Substacks like I do. Like it's what won't burn you out. And so if you find that being on Discord and like leading your community on Discord gives you energy as a founder, do that. Like it's a great way that you are a spokespiece. I'm making up words now. But yeah, you have to figure out like how can you be more public and get the word out about how you're thinking about your vision, how you fit into the macro environment, all the things so that you help control the narrative about what's being told about your company. And also people have a good perception of you as the founder because that is more important than ever. I will say too, because you mentioned about like, how do you then think about company channels and branding? typically the right type of content fits into three categories, or content that does well. It's either entertaining, it's educational, or it's focused on perspective. And so a lot of issues I see with company content is that it's just a bunch of ads, essentially. Like, we just launched 2.0, go look at it. Or here's an ad we made for TV. There's like huge brands that will just like publish all their ads on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but when I get home after work, I do not want to scroll and just read ads. It's terrible. And so when it comes to like, how do you think about then your company page? It's like, how can you put some type of content out there as the company spokespiece? That's informative or
Good startup name, spokespiece.
Is it? Maybe we should get the domain real
Yes,
fast.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you just need to figure out, how do you create good content that's not an ad?
And you mentioned agencies too. So I want to talk about another company that you recently started, the To-Do List Summit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the goal for that and what you're building there?
Yeah. So I haven't been at YC for about a year now. And to this day, I still probably weekly get emails from founders asking essentially to give them office hours like I did before. And then my husband yells at me and says, you need to stop giving away things for free. Apparently he wants to retire early or something. So I've been wrestling with this for a while, because when I was at YC, I would also tell founders, you do not need to hire an agency. That is not where you spend your money. But I also now acknowledge that was easy advice to give because I existed within YC. They had a resource to tap. And so founders still need a resource to tap, and they need experts. But how do you get that if you don't have a VC with a platform team? And so my friends and I, we're also consultants, and we're lonely. So we wanted to work together. And we also wanted to solve a gap that we saw in the market, where how do we help early stage founders do better founder-led marketing when they don't have experts in their own network, or a lot of them wanted to work with us and we just don't have the bandwidth. And so we created a boot camp essentially called the To-Do List, where I led a ton of workshops. So it's like the opposite of thought leadership. So there's a bunch of workshops, like how to land in outlets, and here's how do you write a pitch, and here's what makes up a story. A lot of the things we're talking about right now, but very tactical. So I did comms and branding. We had a woman from Injuries and Horwitz lead social media. We had the head of video, who was at YC, do a huge one on video. Our head of events at YC, who's now also a consultant, lead one on events and executive dinners. No idea how big executive dinners until listening to her talk. That's a really smart one. And then Joan, who led community at YC, and so did a few talks on community and how to think about building community. And the energy was infectious, and we left it all feeling so energetic and good. And we were just like, that worked. Like, that's what we needed to happen. And it was a start of something really good. So we're thinking about I'm actually out here right now because on Saturday we're meeting for 12 hours, as founders do, to talk about what 2026 looks like.
I love it. And so we can check that out at the todolistssummit.com.
That's right.
So we're going to hit the mega gong for that one. TheTodoListSummit.com. Check it out.
I'm pretty sure we made a mistake and put a "the" in there.
Hey, now you can drop the "the" at some point.
We could, just like you at fondo.com.
We got fondo.com. Check us
out.
That
was a huge win. Talk about good marketing, actually. That was great.
Thank you.
That video of like, we have it.
We tried to get the word out.
So good.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us.
Yeah,
this was so awesome. We got to do it again.
Yeah.
And where can we find you online?
I would just go to Lindsay Amos. No, it's amoscoms.com.
Amoscoms.com.
Can't remember any of my handles.
Look for Lindsay Amos on Twitter.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn.
And Substack.
On Substack.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Fondo.com, the all-in-one accounting platform for startups.